Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your media and tech-related production questions every single day. Cindy Drozda from Erie, Colorado is our reader today. Cindy, what's up as we start a new week of questions here on Office Hours?
Our first one is from John Snyder in Reno, Nevada. Moving a series of workflows from HDMI to SDI is a major lift. Where would you start if you were trying to make the change?
Jesse Kester's going to start us off this morning. Jesse?
I'm going to make some broad assumptions about this question. And the first one is that you're in the Blackmagic ecosystem. And the reason I'm making that assumption is because there's a really good kind of vertical entry throughout all their HDMI products and a really good vertical through all their SDI products, but there's nothing in their line that fills that gap between the two. The other assumption I'm going to make is that you're trying to tie all this stuff together with some kind of video switcher, that it's not just setting down the camera and recording on the camera internally, that you're tying into a bigger system with multiple inputs. And if those two assumptions are anywhere near correct, I'm going to recommend something that should be considered unrecommendable, and it is, but I'm recommending it just as a stopgap measure until you leap over that canyon that's kind of built by Blackmagic and other camera companies who don't really bridge that gap for you. The closest thing we've found to a solution for this is the OC GoStream Duet, and what this is a switcher not unlike the ATEM Mini, but it has HDMI and SDI inputs, and it will help you through that transition phase. So you could buy like a mountain of decimators, or you could buy one of these and probably get through that year or two as you make your transition from HDMI to SDI. Good luck.
Courtney Gooden.
Well, I have, there is a Blackmagic intermediate stepping stone, which is the Television Studio HD, which has SDI and HDMI inputs. The first four inputs, it's an 8-input switcher, with the first four inputs being switchable between HDMI and SDI, so you can pick and choose. So it lets you kind of make that transition and still handle both into a single switcher. So that's a good start. And it has multiple SDI outputs, and it has, of course, HDMI multi-view and HDMI program output or programmable output or an aux output that is on both HDMI, I think, and SDI. The other thing is to pick up a bunch of decimator MDHXs, which are, of course, the converters that convert from SDI to HDMI and HDMI to SDI, so they go both ways. And they can also serve, another thing you're going to need is a distribution amplifier, and it can also serve as an SDI distribution amplifiers, because you can set up all these SDI outputs to be either a loop through or through the frame rate converter inside. So you can put the same input through all four outputs or through these two outputs, and these two outputs can come from the HDMI, etc. So it's a pretty handy tool to have, and for $300, you need to have several of those if you're going to make the transition, just to use to get to monitors and to get cameras in that may still be HDMI only. They're great for doing that, and it also does frame rate conversion. So that's another thing you're going to have to deal with, is the flavor of SDI and the flavor of HDMI, and getting those two to work together.
Thank you, Courtney. Let's go to our next question.
Max Stahlsmith in Chautauqua, New York asked the panel, I am researching system upgrades for assistive listening devices, and I'm eyeing this item. I already use Dante from my X32 to vMix. Do I need multicast? With a link.
Courtney, what do you think?
Yeah, what he pointed to was this Listen device, which is a Dante in listen. It's a Wi-Fi. It's a Wi-Fi server, audio server only, and it's a bit pricey. These things are $1,439, and that's for 2 channels. You can get them in 2, 4, 8, or 16 channel, and then they have the broadcast version, which lets you hit up to, if you're going to be broadcasting to an audience, up to 500 people, I think it supports if you're going to be broadcasting assisted listening devices for, let's say, a theater or something like that. If you're just using it for monitoring for a few people, the problem is the latency with Wi-Fi. You're going to have 40 to 60 milliseconds of latency, which is about a frame and a half, which is too much to use for musicians for trying to hear monitor feeds. So if you're just assisted listening and you're not seeing the live person speaking so that the delay will not be disconcerting for you if it's coming in, 60 milliseconds late, you'll be hearing kind of an echo. And if you're speaking and you have one in, it could be a real problem, the 60 milliseconds of latency. But, that's what you're looking at. I would think more of an analog solution rather than a digital Wi-Fi solution might be better for real-time monitoring. In that case, a broadcast type solution, 216, Comtech, or those type of listening devices.
Thanks for the question, Zach. Next question.
Here's one from Pedro G. Gonzalez III in Washington, D.C. Will the price of Blackmagic Design's gear go up by 10% due to new tariffs? Can we pre-order to avoid such tariffs?
Courtney, what do you think the supply chain's going to do to us for these?
Well, we don't know. Those secondary tariffs don't kick in, I think, till Wednesday. But we'll see if they're going to stick around. It depends. I think it's a negotiating tactic. We don't want to get into politics, but we'll see. I think it's too early to tell. I did notice that the Blackmagic, like the price on their new ATEM, is $19.95, which is more than I think quite a bit more than their Extreme has sold for in the past. So they came up quite a bit on the prices already. So maybe they were taking that into consideration when they priced them for the show here, because they probably didn't arrive at a price until the NAB show or the Friday before NAB started when they did their rollout. I think they waited till then to assign prices. But of course, everything will, it depends. Those tariffs have to be paid by the importers. So it depends on who you're going to buy your Blackmagic products from, if they're going to pass along those tariffs or if they can absorb them in the price of the equipment. But we know Blackmagic always publishes their list prices, but we're not sure what the wholesale margin is on them and whether they have enough margin to be able to absorb something like a 10 to 20% tariff.
Jesse Kester.
Now, this show is not going to become price tracking in real time, but we are going to jump over just to see how things have changed in the last 24 hours. The G2 has been kicked up from $19.95 to $21.95 on the Blackmagic website, and I believe yesterday it was at $21.95 on B&H and still at $19.95, but it seems to be at $19.95 on B&H. So if you are thinking to get this, you might want to put your pre-order in and see if you can lock in that price. I tried to load it up on Adorama, but their website is down, and I imagine it's because they're doing site-wide maintenance as they adjust all the prices simultaneously.
I would be shocked if the prices go up instantly, even though everything on the shelves in the back room was purchased at the old price. Who would do that? And I'm laughing about this. I did a series for one of my largest clients, and we spent about a month and a half doing what they called the efficient assortment review. This was corporate-wide, and it was a large company, and they're a retailer. They had lots of products, lots of SKUs, and there was hundreds and thousands of hours spent on pricing decisions. At what level do we put what things on the shelves? And there needs to be something for the people who are price sensitive, something in the middle, and something at the high end for people who want to buy, quote, the best. And that efficient assortment thing informed me a lot about how pricing ripples through things. Back in those days, and this was probably 15 years ago that I went through that thing, it was very difficult to change prices because everything was real time, and you had to make the decision, send that out to the stores. The stores had to take the pricing guns out there. They had to change it in the computers because they were computerized, but they had to do that, and then they put a little price on there. We're seeing more and more that every retailer has now almost a direct connection between the corporate offices and pricing in the field, particularly on websites and things like that. So literally, they can change it in 10 minutes corporate-wide. If they decide that product X needs to go up by 6%, they'll do that. And we hear more and more about dynamic pricing, where literally you can put a whole bunch of algorithms back there, and if you put it in your cart and it stays for a certain amount of time, they'll drop it a little. There's just so many pricing variances now that are possible because everything is online, connected, and live, that I have no idea how pricing decisions are made. And I just know it's very reactive and things like that. And so we're going to see that. And that's why I'm not surprised that even though it was just announced yesterday and it hasn't gone into effect, we're already seeing price changes out there. And it's because the people who control the buttons that change the prices can, kind of in real time. It's just the new world we're living in. We'll see what happens. I hope for those of you who are looking for new gear, it doesn't end up snapping you. I'm thinking about a new iPhone. We just bought one in the family, but I'm thinking about doing another one for that very reason. I know that the ships have already brought tons of phones over here, and Apple's have them in the store, and they were at a particular price that they bought them. Now, the question is, are they going to honor that grouping, thinking that some of these tariffs are going to switch back, or are they going to raise them at some point, and what is that point? The game as a consumer for me is to try to get in just before they decide to raise the number that I have to pay for it. Next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas asks, I'm blown away by all the SDI, loopback, NAS features in Blackmagic's tour de force rollout. Do you think their production chain will keep up with the demand for all these awesome new products coming in June?
Courtney Gooden.
Well, that's, Blackmagic's weakness is delivery. They announce those nice new products, which you see the prototypes at NAB every year. And they usually have a June supposed target date for rollout. And they usually miss that target date. And sometimes they're lucky to get them out right before NAB the next year. They have to get them out before, January of the next year because they don't want to deal with a bunch of angry people that ordered it after NAB last year and still haven't gotten it yet. So we'll have to see with the tariff situation and the world economy being kind of in a turmoil right now, let's just say. I think everyone's wondering whether or not to go into full production or what sales are going to be like or what tariffs may cut down on the amount of sales that they may have. And with people, with the financial situation being what it is, people aren't going to be buying less if their money has less buying power. So I think everyone's going to have to wait this stuff out for a couple of months, and then they'll probably try and ramp up production if they start sometime in June or July. But yeah, don't hold your breath on all those great new things coming, except for Davinci Resolve 20, which had an amazing number of over 100 updates to it, and the beta is available now. And I think they'll get that nailed down for the shipping, for the studio version by June easily.
And don't forget, for actual real-world products in boxes, some of those are on ships right now, cargo ships with thousands upon thousands of units. And so they were created, packaged, and put on the ships when the landscape was one way. Now the landscape has changed. They're going to land. And then, as Courtney mentioned and others have, the tariffs get applied when they get here. So that's a pretty quick potential price change. And the question is also, we've gone through years of manufacturers trying to get to what they used to call efficient assortment, which is fewer and fewer things held in stock at the store level. They don't want tons sitting on a shelf getting dusty while they wait for sales. It's true in consumer goods. It's also true in cars like that. Flooring charges, just keeping them in the dealerships, is very expensive for those people. They want to get them in, sell them as quickly as possible. And so that all goes into the pricing mixture. How quickly do you want to get these things out of here? And you don't want to floor a Cadillac for 6 months. That costs you a lot of money while your money is tied up in it. You want to get it sold. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting coming couple of months as this shakes out. Next question.
This one's from Zach Stahlsmith in Chautauqua, New York. Anyone utilizing Apple Intelligence in their workflow? Pros, cons?
I'm playing more and more with it. You know, they just built Apple Intelligence. They plumbed part of it into Final Cut. And the first time I've had a chance to play with it, we got a new phone for my wife. And we decided on the 16E, which has Apple Intelligence built in. And one of the first things she was doing was just literally lying in bed trying to figure out how things worked. And she got into the image playground area. And I have to admit, we started laughing because it was fun. It was just a lot of fun. And I think I've showed these before, but, you know, it generated something off of a picture. We put her photo in there. And because it was on a camping trip where I just snapped a picture of her, it built that background. I asked it for my shot with a black T-shirt like I normally wear on the show, but also a black baseball cap. And it knocked this thing out like super fast. And then I tried it with a picture of our dog, Charlie, and got the cutest thing on the planet. And now, am I going to use that in a Final Cut program? Maybe in this way. I was shocked by myself when emojis came out. Remember, what was it, 7-8 years ago or something like that? Everybody on the internet, so it was just particularly in the editing community, going, hey, stop doing this junk. We don't want emojis. That's for teenagers, blah, 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 blah. They were all up in arms. You know, we want, and they named 5 different things they wanted the editors to put, they wanted to put in the Final Cut for editors. I started playing with it, and I started realizing in the database, I could start using those same emojis to indicate statuses of projects and folders so that I would put a red dot on the ones that had just come in and I was barely working with. I would change that to a yellow diamond as it got to a certain level of production. And when it was finalized, I'd put a green check mark by it. And darned if that didn't really ease my workflow, because I could just scan the list of projects going on and immediately identify what I needed to work on first and what was a longer-term project. It actually did help my workflow by adapting something that was designed for a different thing. I mean, I thought emojis were just for kids and for texting and stuff like that, but I found a way to adapt it into my workflow. I'm wondering with Image Playground and these things, I'm wondering about things like comping for clients. I'm wondering about storyboarding. I'm wondering whether or not these kind of things, the ability to snap a picture of the model or something like that we're thinking of casting in the actor we're casting in something, and then turn that into something that I can work with in terms of a storyboard. Apple has always been known as somebody who does we're going to develop this thing and send it out there, but we know it's going to be developing really quick over years. And this idea of animatronics as a useful tool for pre-visualization, boy, can you imagine if they ever get this with those tools like Sora and things like that, so you can get a picture of the actual actor and then start comping them delivering lines and things like that? I mean, we're not there yet. But is this a tiny baby step out towards something like that? And I'm not going to bet against something like that happening. I'm just thinking that sometimes these early things that look silly really do change the way I approach doing parts of my business, and it becomes really important to me. So we'll see if this happens. I don't know. Those were our first little baby steps in Apple Intelligence. It made me smile while we were doing those little things that I showed you. And then I put it away. But now in the back of my mind, I am starting to cogitate on, what could I do with this? What could I do that would actually help me make better videos? And that whole pre-comping world where I used to have to go out and look for a storyboard artist to generate story ideas. Maybe this ends up in there. I don't know. We'll see what happens. That's my 2 cents take on it. I could be totally wrong, but you never can know. You never can tell. It's something I didn't have before that I have now, and it's been at this point at least fun. Let's go to the next question.
From Pedro G. Gonzalez III in Washington, D.C., Blackmagic Streaming Encoder 4K looks to be almost perfect. Would anyone else like to see just one more input? HDMI.
Jesse Kester.
I'm kind of out of the one more arms race. You can always ask for one more input or one more output on every device ever built ever, but you're going to pay for it, so I'm good where it is.
Yeah, who has ports that are not unused on there? on their system. We're always full up. We always want one more, but as soon as you get one more, you want one more. Courtney.
I haven't looked at it in about 3 years, but I have the web presenter, and I thought it had an HDMI input and an SDI input, and you could switch between the two of them. But I noticed the new ones just have SDI in and loop through SDI out. And they do have a monitor out that's both HDMI and SDI, so you can monitor, but they don't have two different inputs. But of course, you can solve that with a standards converter, with a decimator, but to give you an HDMI input, but you wouldn't be able to switch between two inputs on the input. But yeah, it'd be nice if it had an extra input.
Almost nobody has ever been upset because they had more inputs rather than fewer of them, unless it messes the price up, I guess. Next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas asks, what are the pros and cons of upgrading to the new Davinci editor that Blackmagic just rolled out?
Jesse Kester, what do you think?
Well, we're talking about the new version of Resolve, is that correct?
Yeah, that was my understanding from his question, the way he phrased it.
The pro is that you're at the tip of the spear. The con is that you're at the tip of the spear. Let's take a look at what we're talking about, and then we'll talk about what we're looking at. So they released the beta for Davinci Resolve version 20, and this is the beta. But there's a lot more AI tools for editing, for picture and sound editing. The one that I'm embarrassingly most excited about are the animated subtitles, and that's because we would jump over to, I guess, CapCut or something to do all of our animated subtitles, and it'll be really nice to do that domestically instead of abroad. The con is that you're operating on a beta for the next couple of months, and we're just not ready to take that plunge as a business. We'll wait till the full release is out to do the upgrade.
Courtney Gooden.
Well, it's a free download, and if I wouldn't use it in a mission critical, of course, editing is never really mission critical unless you're using it for live playback or something, which Resolve can now do. But I think it'd be fun to download and experiment with it. I think you may find that one of the downsides is you may have to buy more powerful equipment to run it on to use all the AI features. I really liked the improvements they made to the Fairlight section of it has been expanded tremendously, and the AI editing of music looks really great, so that you can just say, okay, I need 33 seconds. I've got this music needle drop that's 60 seconds long, and I need it to be 33 seconds. And you just put it in there, you show it where it's going to go out, and it goes in, and it doesn't change the speed. It doesn't speed it up or slow it down or change the pitch. It goes in and actually edits the music using AI and takes phrases out and butts the two back together or crossfades them together so that you don't hear any of the edits, and makes your music fit exactly the length of time that you need. And that seemed to be almost magic. Anybody who's edited music and tried to make the cuts right on the beats and make the cut invisible to the user so you don't know that you've dropped 30 seconds out of that 1 minute piece. It's almost magic, and it can make multiple cuts in several places so it doesn't stick out, so you don't end up with phrases repeating or things like that. So that seems almost magical. And it had so many different AI uses for generative AI, generating images and removing things and tracking, and I can't even mention all of them. There's over 100 of them now, but it'd be good to get your feet wet with the beta, and so that you'll learn and use it as a learning experience. You'll know how to use these tools when it finalizes and it becomes stable.
Jesse Kester, you want to kind of go back in?
Courtney, I'm worried there's something wrong with your connection, because it sounded like you said editing is not mission critical.
Not for me. You may be for a little bit of a deadline, but I mean, I wouldn't use it in a mission critical. It's not live. That's what I meant. It's not live. So,
well, editing tends to be something you do between the end of principal photography and the beginning of distribution. So there's usually time in there. Now that Courtney fessed up and said, unless you're doing live work, and people do edit to get a live conference out and stuff like that. So there can be mission critical time frames in there.
Well, what I'm talking about is a beta. You got to worry about it crashing. And if it crashes and you have to reboot, it takes you 30 seconds or a minute and a half longer. no big deal. In a live show, that's death. So,
Yeah. Anyway, well, keep our fingers crossed. And Paul, come back if you have more questions about what everybody on the panels that are changing all the time thinks about Blackmagic coming up with a new Davinci set of features. Next question.
Here's one from Pedro G. Gonzalez III in Washington, D.C. Just saw Cindy Drozda's live stream of turning an egg and was lost in nirvana. Love the production value. Can you please describe your setup, especially your audio?
Before I let Cindy answer this, if you don't watch the show regularly and you don't know it, Cindy is a wood turner lathe queen par excellence. We've all been astonished, and she has a fabulous rig. She does a lot of online videos for people in the wood turning community, and it's just always a pleasure because she really does have a fabulous setup, and you really get a chance to see how that art is accomplished. So, Cindy, I'm going to toss it to you and let you answer this.
Well, thanks for all the nice words, Bill. So my audio chain is a Sennheiser HSP4 head-worn cardioid mic, boom mic, plugged into a Rode Wireless Go 2 transmitter, receiver plugged into the computer via a USB-C, and I'm using a Windows tower and vMix to do camera switching. The cameras I have are kind of a mixed bag of various things. Probably on the egg video, you saw mostly the overhead, which is a Panasonic G9 that I have connected to the computer with a touchscreen and Lumix tether software, so I can just touch the screen and instantly focus wherever it is. And that's great. And some controls for moving the camera around. My side tailstock view camera is a Sony A6400, and that one is fixed in place, but I can zoom them and focus them with remotes while I'm going if I take a second. What else can I say about that setup? By office hours standards, it's really kind of low end, but I've got it rigged up to where I have a mini keyboard and vMix keyboard shortcuts to switch cameras, put in overlays, virtual PTZ, zoom in and out, and a joystick to move the cameras around, and so it works for what I'm doing.
And I'm going to break back in again and say, if you haven't watched any of Cindy's stuff, she's been doing this a long time. She's been going out to trade shows. She's been one of those wood-turning demonstrators who goes to trade shows and shows people how to do things, and a crowd gathers to watch her. So she's highly skilled at this. Remember, she is working with power tools. And so I'm just saying, even, if you see somebody like Cindy and you think, well, that really looks easy, because she's making it look super easy and super compelling and getting fabulous results. I wouldn't try to set up a bunch of cameras if you're a first-year wood turner and use power tools and try to do a demonstration at the same time. That would be very unsafe. Cindy's been doing it for a long time and can do it safely and get great results. And I didn't see the egg thing, but I'm just trying to wrap my head around the idea of turning with such precision that you end up with an oval shape that makes sense. That must not be easy. Yeah, talent. Cindy, you want to come back in and say something else?
I want to speak to Bill's comment about the turning and the power tools and everything else. First, you got to know how to turn, and then you got to know how to describe what you're doing, and then you got to be able to do both of them at once in front of a crowd, and then you add video to it, and so now you're not only thinking about what you're doing, what you're telling them, and safely, of course. You have to think about what view are you showing them. So saying, well, I need to show them this right now, and reaching over and pushing a button. So the video part has added a new dimension to presenting for me.
And this is why we're so excited that there has been a democratization of these skills. What Cindy does by herself now would have taken a small TV show to show at the same level. She's being very modest. And yes, she's using some consumer-ish type equipment, but that's not the key here. The key here is she understands what the viewer needs to see to be able to do this art correctly and to express to them, this is how you do this. This is I'm going to guess here because this is not my thing, but this is why you use this chisel in this way, and look really closely. I've got a close-up shot of where the chisel meets the wood, and you can see exactly the technique I'm using to get this result out of this piece of wood. That is something that an individual didn't have the equipment, the skills. They may have had it in their shop, but they didn't have it so they could show it to the whole world, and it's fabulous when you watch it. So I'm not going to embarrass her anymore. I'm going to move on, but every time I've seen any of her work, my jaw's dropped. Next question.
Next one's from Douglas Carmichael. What direct injection do you prefer for tracking synths?
Courtney Gooden.
Well, digital interface or direct interface. All my synths have balanced analog line level outputs, so I don't really need a DI. You might want to use a box if your synths only have unbalanced outputs at consumer level rather than the plus 4 dB, minus 10 output. You could use a transformer. You could go through a DI box for that, but I would try and stay at line level rather than to go down to mic level, which some of these DI boxes do. So I'm not sure if I'd have a choice since I'm not really using any. I'm going directly into a mixer at line level, balanced line level in out of my synth. So that works pretty good. But if you do have to get into longer cables for some reason, usually I try and keep a mixer right next to the synths so that they go right into the mixer with just a couple of feet. If they have unbalanced outputs like RCA outputs or quarter-inch plug unbalanced outputs, go directly into one of the line level inputs on the mixer and just keep the leads short enough and unbalance them as on the input. Most mixers have the ability to handle balanced or unbalanced inputs.
Hey, remember, if you have questions you want to put into the show queue, the simplest way to do that is just type askofficehours.global into your show process. You can also, and let's hope I have the right one. I don't have the wrong one set up in my cut bus. Let me switch down to the right one, and I'm going to toss up the QR code in the corner of the scene there. You can shoot that QR code to get you to the same place. That is askofficehours.global. That lets you type in from anywhere one question to get into the show queue. Remember, once the questions are in the show queue, people who come in through the main office hours process and have signed up for it can vote on those questions. And once you vote on them, that determines how soon we get to something and where we put our priority list in terms of getting to our questions. But askofficehours.global is the quick way you can do it from anywhere at any time. All right, let's go to our next question.
From Rion Smith in Trinidad, West Indies. Also, I want to have like 4 phones users at different parts of the island stream back to me at master control. What receiver software or hardware would you prefer to use, including possibility for talkback to the 4 phone camera operators?
Ooh, this is going to be a little bit complex. You're not asking for a simple thing. You've got 4 cameras that are going to have to be probably via Wi-Fi into some central switching place. You have to get those signals in. You have to scrape the signals out of whatever they're landing in. It's going to be some form of video switcher, and then be able to do that. Now, the IFB, which is the traditional TV station process, it stands for interruptible foldback, and it's what in a TV station the director and the other people use to talk to remote people, whether it's remote camera operators or producers or other people. We use a similar system here using comms software, but to do that all remotely, when network level camera operators and things like that do it, there's a lot of infrastructure to allow that. Lines to the camera that's doing both video and audio back and forth, plus talkback circuits that allow for comms. And you'll see all camera operators at that level wearing headsets where the director can talk to them and direct shots and things like that. Making that simpler using a bunch of phones is a little more difficult. Now, phones do two-way communication, so that it's not that big a deal to establish a phone line back and forth and use that for comms. To do that plus shoot plus get that wirelessly back to a central location and avoid the latency that's going to make switching those more complicated, you're kind of biting off a good little bit of effort here, Rian. Courtney, you have some thoughts about how to simplify it or make it work?
Well, I'm not sure exactly if this is going to be a live show or not. And we did something similar to this at Cinegear last year on the day before our broadcast, where several of us were just roaming around with our phones on a monopod, broadcasting, connecting over Zoom to the mothership back in Santa Rosa, where they had individual either Zoom ISO, I'm not sure what they were using on the other end, but they had each of our phones coming into a different computer or a different isolated channel, which were then fed into a mixer, video mixer. And they could talk to us over Zoom because it's a two-way communication, and we're sending video to them from our phones. And that worked pretty well. I could hear what they were talking back, and they were sending me a mix minus back to me. So I could hear what they were talking about, the other people, the other camera contributors were talking about, and I could also hear questions posed to me over that return audio feed. So that might kind of work. Just use Zoom or some other type of video conferencing software to send your video into a computer at the other end, which is also logged into Zoom, and use the cellular connection to get in. That's what we did, and seemed to work pretty well.
Yeah, I was actually part of that. I shot at Cinegear using that system. The only downside was that occasionally my phone would do dropouts and things like that. Now we were on the studio lot at Paramount, so
we were walking around in sound stages that are covered with chicken wire.
Right, Faraday cages. Basically. So yeah, we did have a lot of dropouts. It was not the completely smooth thing. You may have open areas, and if you're at something like an outdoor concert, there may be nothing between you and the receiving system. Whatever you decide to do and whatever you do, I would test before the actual performance to make sure that you're not going to have, the experience, even with the big rig that we did at NAB last year. I literally found myself with my crew out about to do a live hit, and if the camera operator took 2 steps to the right because there was an LED wall in some places, the signal would go away, and if you took 2 steps back to the left, it would come back. So there's a lot of instability in trying to do live from remote, and you just have to test. It's getting better, and who knows,
It also depends on what the cellular coverage is like in Trinidad, West Indies. Yeah. Your coverage may not be near as good as it is here in Los Angeles. And you could, look into Starlink as if these are very remote sections of the island, you could have a Starlink uplink at each of those 4 locations to tie the phones into and feed that way. So that's another possibility if your cellular network doesn't have good coverage across the island.
Yeah. Things that work in consumer stuff, you get them onto a show like that, and sometimes you get not real good surprises. That's been my experience anyway. But let us know how it works. If you get something together and it works, please, Rian, come back on the show. You're an old friend of our shows, and we'd love to hear how things work out. Let's go to the next question.
Coming to us through the QR code from Kuklong in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I will be live streaming a podcast with 3 friends. I plan to stream it to YouTube. For gear, I have Yamaha DM3 and mics for audio, ATEM Mini Extreme for switcher, and some cameras, Mac Mini. How would panels set it up for streaming?
Jesse Kester, what would be your preference?
It sounds like you're at the start of this adventure. And first of all, congratulations. It sounds like it's going to be a very, very good time for you and your friends. But I'm going to be giving you kind of 1,000-foot view to get you kind of over the first several humps that you might encounter as you kick this project off. First of all, I would I would say that you're not going to be streaming with 3 friends. You're going to be streaming with 4 friends, and that 4th friend is going to be off mic and off camera, making sure that all the technical concerns are taken care of. There's no reason to watch a stream about people figuring out how to stream in real time. Make sure your show is actually what the show is and not people wrestling with gear for the first 20 minutes of every episode. About that, knowing what the show is before you go live for the first time. Do a couple of episodes in private. Know that they're going to be in the trash can unless your show becomes a mega hit, and then some, Christmas season you can release those as bonus episodes while you guys actually take a vacation. But you want to do the first 2, 3, 4 episodes off the air, just so you understand what your goals are and what your rhythms are as 3 people on the mic. To speak more to the technical side of things, if I had to, I would stream from the ATEM, not from the Mac Mini, so you can have the ATEM do all the encoding for you with a stream key, and this frees your it frees your Mac up to focus on monitoring the stream and keeping an eye on any chats that are going on and kind of engaging with the community. Again, that's the 4th person's job. You guys are not allowed to stop doing your show just so you can read comments in silence for a while and then respond to them with nods and grunts of approval. You really want to do the show when you're doing the show and have a moderator who's moderating. Best of luck. It's going to be awesome. Have fun with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, the spirit you bring to it is where the fun comes from. But I can't support Jesse's comment about have that 4th person, because boy, have I learned, without a central person kind of not involved in pushing the buttons or doing the thing, but watching over the whole thing, who can help direct people to do things, it just adds so much organization to a show. And even if you have really good friends, the fact that, there's a moment's silence and everybody starts talking at once, trying to fill the moment of silence, as opposed to what you see on our show, which is we have a protocol and we know who's coming next. And we know that when we are finished speaking, we know exactly where it's going next and exactly where it's going next. And that's part of what makes the conversation listenable here on our show. And without that overall direction, it's very hard to naturally do that without a lot of practice. So, but yeah, have fun. Good luck and have fun. Next question.
This one's from Paul Val, who's in Austin, Texas. Explain encoding.
In 25 words or less, and why? Jesse, you going to dive into encoding?
In its simplest form, encoding is to convert one chunk of information into another system of storing that information. So you know coding, it's in every codec. That's what it is a encode, decode, codec. Encode, decode. The important things, the stuff that stays at the front of my mind when we're talking about encoding are just a couple of quick rules of thumb. And that is that encoding is locked to compression. So when you encode something, you compress it to one degree or another. And the thing to keep in mind is that the more you compress something, the less recognizable it is at a glance as that signal. So what I mean by that is when you look at a record, that's very low compression. It might not be high fidelity, but it's low compression, and it's low compression because you could actually just look at it and understand that those bumps are probably sound encoded in some way. And you can get a sewing needle and a paper that you fold into a cone, and you can run that along your record and decode it. Very, very simple method of encoding, very, very simple method of decoding. When you get into something like H.264, H.265, these are much more complicated methods of encoding and decoding. And that means that if somebody were to look at the file, just look at it naked, it would be very hard to understand it as a video file without those structures around them. Another thing, if we can just tiptoe into philosophy for a moment, I think it's fun to think about encoding in a broader sense. So when you have a feeling of love, and you want to express that to somebody else, you use words to express it. And what you're doing is you're taking that feeling of love and you're encoding it in language and hoping that the person on the other side of that table is able to take that language and decode it into a feeling of love inside themselves. So don't just focus on H.264 and H.265 files. Think about the whole experience of the human condition when you discuss encoding.
Yeah, that was a very, very nice explanation, Jesse. I really enjoyed that. A couple of things came to my mind. A programmer really, 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 really early in my career said something to me that has always stuck with me. He said, I can say black pixel, black pixel, black pixel, black pixel 1,000 times, or I can say black pixel, repeat 999 times. One of those takes a long time. The other one is short, but gives you exactly the same information. It is essentially a process of run length encoding. Now, that is super simplified, but it gives you an idea of how encoding most often is trying to make something more efficient, quicker, or more universal in terms of other people being able to unpack the data, as Jesse said, and use the data. So that's a little bit about encoding. See also, there are a lot of variations. You'll hear things like transcoding. That's taking something that was already in code and moving it into a different form of encoding. This is big stuff that is kind of fundamental to digital media, and it's good to study these things and pay attention. Courtney Gooden's going to add some more.
Yeah, just to add to a little bit of everything that was said. Encoding is a method of converting from a series of pictures or audio into a more compact format or something that is more suited for whatever transport you're going to be recording on. The type of coding that Bill was talking about, Reid Huffman, is for intra-frame coding, where you just store the color of a pixel and it does run length encoding. It's called RLE. That's usually used for intra-frame. In other words, the compression happens within a single frame, but there's no necessary relationship of one frame to the next. That would be interframe encoding, where is H.264 and 265 are interframe encoding, which are much more efficient and can get a much higher level compression. Usually intra-frame usually can only do about 2.5 to 1 compression. The interframe, like H.264, can go like 10 to 1 compression, depending upon the bit rate you're going to end up with. And it's lossy. There's lossless compression, and then there's lossy compression. Lossless compression can be encoded in a way that it can be decoded and come back with exactly the same bits that went in. And you will not see the difference between the input and the output. Lossy compression, it loses some it throws away some of the data in order to compress the information. And then, of course, there's transmission protocols that you have to deal with, RLS, HLS, for transmission and streaming that are packetized for sending that information across a network where packets could be lost and they have to be recovered or weighted or acknowledged and resent. So there's that type of encoding as well. So there's many different flavors of encoding depending upon whether you're talking about streaming or compression for recording or compression for transmission.
It's a complicated subject. Jesse, you want to wrap? Yeah. Oh, were you finished? I'm sorry, Courtney. I thought okay. Jesse?
If I may take it into intergalactic metaphors from Mars for a moment.
Please do.
Because I think
transgalactic, please.
I think we're really close to the kind of the goal of the human condition. Bear with me, please, for a moment. The biggest problem with the human condition is that we have encoded all of our experiences into languages that we know. That might seem like such an obvious thing that it doesn't even warrant mention. But I feel like what we're building with LLMs now are the final piece of that puzzle. We sent the Voyager record out decades ago, and that was a really cute little version of what I think we're building towards as a species. And it seems to me that these LLMs come from a genetic impulse to get our encoding out of linguistics. And what I mean by that is they're in their infancy now, but it's very easy to imagine in 50 years these large language models able to take in any sonic impulse or any visual impulse from any species, any form of life that represents itself sonically or visually, and within 24, 30 hours, be able to understand their methods of communication and take the body of information that we've generated that is currently really tethered to a few languages, English, Chinese, Hindi, Japanese in there a little bit, and get that body of data out into any other form imaginable. And I feel like this is kind of the impulse that caused us to encode our emotions into words early in our species development is finally seeing its realization in these formats of machines able to learn systems of language on their own and then feedback ideas and translate ideas between the unknown, what I believe are currently unknown to us and unknown to the LLMs, but at one point to be known by them. That's where I think this is headed as a species and as I don't separate the technological innovations from the species. So as a species with technological innovations, that seems to be the impulse and the destination to me.
Not to make it even weirder, but we're talking about transferring intelligence in the broadest sense. And so my question is always, what kind of intelligence and how do you encode the different kinds? I mean, there's spatial intelligence, mathematical intelligence. What about emotional intelligence? I mean, we're trying to encode all these things and distribute them to other people. In fact, most of what we do as creatives is try to get an emotional reaction out of an audience. So how do we encode that? We've got scripts and we've got directors and we've got all these people trying to figure out how to pass from one person to another feelings as well as formula, as well as artistic goals. It's a complex thing we humans are trying to do, but it's always fun. That's why we're here every day talking about it. Let's go to our next question.
Evan Troxel in Talent, Oregon. New upcoming project capturing a video and audio podcast series. I want a 3-camera setup, 1 wide shot for both people, 2 medium shots for each individual. What camera should I consider? Recording on ATEM Mini, Blackmagic 6K, or Sony ZV-E1 II? Small budget.
Jesse Kester's going to start out. Give me a hand. Jesse.
Yeah, we'll keep this one a little more grounded.
It was fun though.
If I were given what you've given us, this is the time that I'm going to say go for the ZV-E1s over the Blackmagic 6Ks, and there's a couple of reasons for that. The first is that the autofocus is going to be way better, so it's a much more hands-off camera. Blackmagic has seemed to upgrade their autofocus. We haven't tested it, and until we test it and find that it is really good, we're not going to recommend it. And even if it is really good, it probably can't even come close to what Sony has been doing. So I would go with the ZV-E1s. The other reason for that is if you want to record proxies, or not proxies, but if you want to record in camera as well as at the ATEM level, the ATEM is going to give you 1080 and you might want a 4K signal or higher in camera. If you're on Blackmagic, it defaults to Blackmagic RAW when you're plugged into an ATEM. So you hit record on the ATEM, you got a drive plugged into your Blackmagic. The Blackmagic will also record, but it doesn't do ProRes when you have it set up that way. So I would really suggest going with the ZV-E1s because you could get a 4K signal out of those and it wouldn't be locked to Blackmagic RAW. You could do a much higher compression codec. You don't need terabytes of data for every hour that you do a podcast. It might be enough to have a compressed video signal from those. So that's my 2 cents, and you got them for free.
Worth way more than free. Hey, if you value what we do here, if you've been enjoying the discussion and want us to continue, there are a few ways you can help. You can like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's kind of square one. We'd appreciate that. You can volunteer, and that's fabulous because you get to meet some of the office hours people and at least online interact with everybody who does all the amazing technical work that makes this show possible. So you can become part of the team. Or if you want something even simpler than those two, you can simply donate if you'd like to support our work. That's officehours.global/donate. Thanks for watching, regardless of which of those paths you go down, if any of them. Let's get to our next question.
Here's one from Sam Rhimes in Maidenhead. Good morning, everyone. Is there a solid little breakout box that connects to my iPad Air's USB-C and has both an AUX and XLR connection? I need to record vocals into Logic Pro for iPad.
A little breakout box for an iPad Air. So if it's a brand new one, you're going to be in a USB-C. If it's an earlier iPad Air, you've got a Lightning connector. And there are various interfaces that go out of both of those kinds of ports and break out XLR connections. That's going to be an audio port out, an aux out. Are you talking about power there, or do you want two audio outs? Maybe you want two audio outs. Once you get the sound out of the port on the iPad Air, you obviously can pull that into a small mixer and distribute that both as an aux signal out and an XLR. So the simplest way is to just iPad into a small mixer of some kind. Then you get the kinds of audio you want out of there. And you're looking for the other direction. You need to record vocals into Logic Pro for the iPad. And yeah, there are interfaces. If you just do a search on audio interface, recording audio interface for Logic Pro on iPad, I bet you will find that a lot of people out there have gone down this path, because there are a lot of people using iPads for remote recording and things. Courtney, you had some suggestions?
Yeah, there are a number of them out there. I would suggest come back on Wednesday, get the cream of the crop with all the people.
Oh, yeah, our audio folks.
Motu makes one like this. It's an audio interface with a USB-C output, which would go into your iPad, into the standard USB audio interface. So it gives you in and out. And this gives you mic preamps, which also have 48-volt phantom powering or line input. So you can use them either. They're switchable for either high impedance for guitar input over the 1/4 inch for an aux input as line, or a mic input with 48 volts. So they aren't the greatest preamps around, Motu. I've had one of these and it was okay. They're pretty cheap for about $200, but it'll get you into an iPad for recording vocals, and you can put a high quality condenser microphone with 48-volt phantom into that, as well as an aux input to feed a guitar, let's say, into the second channel.
There you go. Next question.
Coming in through the QR code, Ola A in Kent, UK is asking, I am trying to send the output of an ATEM switcher to multiple TV screens via an HDMI splitter, but it doesn't seem to work. Any tips on how to fix this?
Well, there could be a number of things going on. The ATEM coming out, I wonder, you could be in the DCHP world, you could be in copy protection coming out of that, and that's why it's not going into multiple TV screens. I'm really glad Courtney just popped in and raised his hand, because I think he knows a lot more about distributing of video signals than I ever will. Courtney, grab it and run.
I have tons of HDMI splitters. I've never run into a problem other than you have the TVs can't handle the resolution that you're sending to them. So if both TVs are the same and they can handle 1080p, just make sure that they can handle 1080p and not 1080i. And just make sure the output of the ATEM is set to a resolution and frame rate that the monitors can handle. Make sure you're not outputting 24-frame video, because a lot of time monitors can't handle it. So go into your splitter with that. Sometimes it's handshake. It depends upon which monitor you plug in first. If they're different TV screens, plug in the one that works first and then plug in the second one, and then try reversing them if that doesn't work, if one of them doesn't work. Maybe you just got a bad splitter. That's the other possibility. HDCP, usually don't run into that if you're plugging into a monitor, more if you're plugging into a recording device, because HDCP will black out anything if it detects a recording device. Most monitors do handshake for HDCP, but the ATEM does not output HDCP. It's uncompressed output. So
that's why. That's the kind of reason I wanted to go to Courtney, because I don't do a lot of this, and I know you've done tons of it.
I haven't had too many problems. I used to use HDMI splitters all the time on my cart, and came out of an ATEM switcher all the time. I went to those and didn't seem to have too much of a problem, as long as I stayed at 1080p and below resolution.
There you go. Hey, thank you for watching today. As always, we appreciate your being here. Don't forget, if you have questions in the queue and we didn't get to them, there's two kind of threads. If you put them in through the QR code, they will stay there and be carried over to the next show. If you put them in through the regular Mukana interface, those will get sent back to you into your notes field. So you can bring them back should you wish to in the future. We will get to the ones we didn't get to today, tomorrow, and those will kind of flow in at the beginning of the show. Our thank yous today, we always love our thank yous because this show does not happen just based on the people whose faces you see on the screen. We are a tiny part of this entire effort in the back that starts with those of you who are watching. You are our producers in a very real sense. It is your questions that drive this show, so we appreciate your coming here every day and posing these questions that we get to toss around, and hopefully by letting everybody watch the question and answer process, everybody learns a little bit every day, which is our kind of fundamental goal here. So thank you to our producers for your questions each day, to the panelists who show up here every day and freely share their expertise unpaid. We truly appreciate it. This show does not work without people willing to come on and go on a live broadcast and say, here's what I know about. Good luck, and hopefully it helps for you. So thank you, panelists. And finally, the back-end crew, the amazing back-end crew, people that I feel it is an absolute privilege to know and work with every day. It is a movable feast of people. I love coming in the morning and seeing who of my friends from all around the world do I get to hang out with today and talk to and interact with. And in many cases, they're people that I've gotten to know, and we work on things outside of this show because they're just fabulous people. So to our entire back-end crew, thank you so very much for being a part of this. To lock traversal today, if you were to try to go around and get the expertise of the people we've had on the show today, you would have had to travel 22,000 miles. That's 35,000 kilometers, 171 million bananas for scale. It is Monday, which means tonight. No, it's Tuesday. No, it's Monday. So Grant should be on tonight, and I would imagine that they're going to be coming from NAB. So special tonight. If you 6 p.m. Pacific time, check out Extra Hours. You probably will be checking out some stuff from NAB, and keep track of your Discord. Yeah, I just got a confirmation live from NAB in Extra Hours tonight. And keep your eye on your Discord and other feeds. They may be on the show floor, and they may be able to get a signal out of there if so. The website will probably have a listing of it, and good luck. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.
Well, maybe they made special arrangements. The show closes before 6 o'clock, so maybe they'll come from the show floor if they can convince the security guys to.
Yeah, I got a ping yesterday that we're going live, and so if you're in Discord, if you're in the Office Hours Discord, that's the quickest way to find out what's going on. I would also check the YouTube channel, and they may have some sort of coming, we're planning on going live in an hour on the Office Hours YouTube channel. So some thoughts.
They may be coming from a hotel room or something and do an NAB wrap-up of what.
Oh, that's quite possible, too, sure. Yeah, I think CJ and Alex were both in the Westgate, so
or maybe from the bar.
Wi-Fi coverage is a little bit spotty in the bar.
Oh, I don't know. It might be really great.
That's true.
They may turn off the Wi-Fi transceivers inside the convention center closing.
That's true. They get shut down the infrastructure.